After about 1.5 years since the last update, Fireteam has finally received new content. From the new additions to the map to the revamped World War III USMC faction, a lot of things have been changed in Fireteam version 0.2.1 that allow for new ways to play the game and encourages teamwork in order to successfully capture objectives and take out enemies. Although there are quite a few new issues that arise from this update, they aren't necessarily game breaking and in most cases don't have a major impact on the game, and the developers have already started working on fixes that will hopefully be pushed out soon. Now let's get into the new content. If you've played Fireteam in the past, you already know the movement was generally extremely responsive to any input. This allowed for things like strafing, drop shotting, and various other types of movement. In version 0.2.1, you now have momentum and there's delay before your character is able to change states multiple times. As a result, players say they feel like they're running on ice. I personally see no issue with the new movement and I kind of like it, as it makes strafing less effective and drop shotting completely useless. Next up, we've got close quarters combat aiming, or CQB aiming. This is the NVG aim, except you don't need to have NVGs on in order to use it. This is a very useful feature for anyone using a scope without a rear mounted sight. CQB aim, as its name implies, allows you to aim easier when you're in close quarters with the enemy. To turn on CQB aim, you need to press shift while aiming. Obviously that's not the most ideal keybind for it, but the developers have already said they are going to allow players to change keybinds for it, so be on the lookout for that. Another new addition is the new weapon sounds. This is more down to personal opinion, but I think they sound great. Fireteam has always had great sounds, but in this update, they've gotten even better. Practically every weapon has had its firing sound updated, and of course, we can't forget about the new bullet impact and whizzing sounds. Those are also really nice and a good step up from the old sounds. Now we're on to some changes that force a change in playstyle. In the past, solo players could cause significant amount of damage to opposing forces without any issue. Suppression had very little effect on players and were more of an annoyance rather than an actual problem. But since the update dropped, suppression has had a pretty major impact on the player due to its increased weapon sway. And a lot of people have said they hated the new sway and they also believe it needs to be tuned down. However, I think the increased sway forces players to rely upon each other more, as they can't just run and gun by themselves without any worry. If you don't know what I'm talking about already, if you're being shot at, your screen will darken and the weapon sway will increase drastically. This means in order to advance effectively on enemy positions, you need someone to suppress enemies while you're moving on their position. This is known as fire and maneuver. The enemies won't be able to aim as well and their screens will be darkened, so they won't be able to see very well or fire at you as effectively while you're advancing on them. There is an exception to this, and I'll talk about that later. Another big one is recoil. The recoil in-game is now more dramatic and snappier than it used to be. Camera recoil is, as usual, not very high, and controlling recoil in full auto is relatively easy now, especially for guns like the M249 or the PKM. Recoil isn't bad anymore, but it doesn't really matter since if you can't get your weapon on target, you're not going to hit anything anyways. Now to one of the biggest changes in the new update, bipods. Bipods negate sway and recoil for weapons like the M249. This allows for massive opportunities to make big plays and help their team move more effectively. The bipods alone had me playing the game for hours as a machine gunner and an automatic rifleman, just suppressing positions and cutting off enemy movements just by deploying the bipod and holding down my left mouse button. The bipods can deploy on flat surfaces when you are prone, or they can be propped on objects like sandbag emplacements while crouching. You can also deploy them when you're crouched on the side of the road when necessary. The bipods limit the amount you can rotate left and right, and sometimes when deploying the bipod, mostly on uneven surfaces, the camera will snap to different locations, which can really throw you off when you're trying to engage an enemy. This will hopefully be fixed later on, but generally this isn't that big of an issue. Basically every machine gun and automatic rifleman's weapon has a bipod. However, for one faction, every single role gets a bipod. The World War III USMC have to be the most dominant faction to play on as of now, since they can once again use the M27 IAR, and not only that, but every single one has a suppressor and a bipod. This means literally anyone can be a sniper. Since I've been playing after the update, I've yet to lose on World War III USMC. However, due to the new doctrines in the United States Marine Corps, the M249 is no longer available for the automatic rifleman, which is unfortunate, but to be honest, now that every role has a bipod, I don't really think it's that big a deal, and anyways, the M240 is still here. The World War III USMC also got all their gear revamped, such as helmets and third-person weapon models. The revamp was well done and it looks really good in game. An important addition to the game is the medic quality of life update. This update allows players to be able to see how far the closest medic is and gives feedback when the medic is reviving them or healing them. It also allows players to call medics and the medic will see a symbol where the player is incapacitated. This was a much needed update since most people couldn't tell if a medic was able to help them or not. Hopefully the next update won't take as long as this one did, but aside from some of the bugs, I think this update was a good step forward and will make for great content in the future. I'll leave you with some footage of me playing as World War III USMC Fireteam leader, and if you all like Fireteam and want to help support the developers, there are some links in the description and the pinned comment on some donation t-shirts and some Dev Team 6 merch. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.